what this work has to offer is an individual's ability to sustain themselves in a way that they are able to show up and be comfortable in themselves and not compromise how they are feeling.
Welcome to Get Scene Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. We are going to dive into acting insights, meet industry pros, and master the business. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We're keeping you behind the scenes and ahead of the game. What's up, everybody? This is Get Scene Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. Thanks so much for coming back, or if this is your first time, welcome. Thank you for choosing our podcast to be with you on your journey, and get ready for a fantastic episode today. I'm really excited because today we're going into, I'll say, some tools that you're going to be able to absolutely use and implement immediately. This isn't going to be ideas, I think. This is going to be, we're going to go into some methodology stuff, and with that, we have a nationally certified instructor in the Alexander technique, everyone, Miss Morgan Rysdon. What's up, Morgan?
Hi, thank you, Jesse, for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I mean, do you know how long we've been working together? I should have looked this up.
You know what?
Beforehand.
I think it was during the pandemic. I actually was talking to somebody at the conference of yours, and they were asking me, and I was like, I don't know how he found me, but I feel like we started working together maybe during one of your epic 200 plus people. And I'm like, wow, there's so many people on the Zoom. Like, like how many pages, So I think it was sometime during that period.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So Candace would have found you. It would have been Candace for sure. And I mean, we really have a lot of pride here at Get Scene, like to do a lot of different methodology and not be like, you have to do this one thing. I mean, I really like Meisner, but there's so many different things. And I think it's our job as actors to learn as many different things that we can from as many different instructors to like put all these different tools in our bag. And so I think you bring something that's really, really valuable in the Alexander technique. And you quizzed me right before we got started, which I liked. Why don't you tell everyone what Alexander technique is? Because I want everyone after this episode today to be able to take like at least one thing to put into their toolbox.
Yeah.
And really have this episode be so powerful. And then obviously, people can find you if they want to learn more. But I want to be able to talk eloquently enough about this so we can be like, that's pretty cool. Like I can go do that right now after the episode, or I can do that tomorrow, or I can do this daily, or whatever it is. So what would you say Alexander technique is if I don't know what it is?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So Alexander technique in a nutshell is a mind-body technique that helps individuals, actors, and everyday people learn how to use themselves better in everyday life, looking at habits that they have that are being interfered with, and helping to get rid of any tension or excess stress or compression in their body that's causing them to, carry around things that they don't need to. So if you think about, things like when you get nervous or when you get anxious and you start to tighten up and your voice maybe starts to crack and you have shallow breathing, it's being able to notice that that's happening, being able to be aware of that, and then be able to have skills in place to work on that and help hopefully avoid that in the future.
So it's also about an awareness too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so often I'll talk about that in classes. I'm like, we need to, I don't feel like a lot of instructors talk about awareness, and it's like, but if you're aware that like you're not hitting your mark, if you're aware that you're, moving a lot with your face in film and TV work or something, like if you don't have the awareness, you can't change it,
Yes.
So it sounds like a lot of this too has to do with that awareness and understanding that you have some tension. And then we need to do the exercises, whatever it might be, to get rid of it.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, I always tell my actors, if you've had a direction or a note from somebody where they say, hey, we've observed that you did XYZ. And maybe you've heard that note from somebody before. You've heard it from a director or a casting agent or, and it was a different production completely. Chances are, if it's the same note being given to you, and they've been telling you to do something different, that's just you. That's not a choice you've made about a character. It's typically something that you don't know. It's unconscious and you just default to it. So if you don't know what to do with your hands, if you don't know what to do with your face, if you always tilt your head to the side when you're listening, it's knowing that I do that and then choosing to change it because now you have a heightened awareness and you are able to know, yeah, I was doing that in that scene.
That makes me think of, I feel like often I'll hear actors, they're maybe overacting a little bit in a scene, and we might give them a note on it, or a different instructor might give them a note. And they're like, well, that's just like what I do. That's just like what I do. And I'm always like, I love that you said like, that's a default. I'm like, yeah, I think that's just like a default of like your actor ways. Like you think that's what you do, but it like doesn't quite look authentic enough.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, you know, there's comfort in familiarity, right? So people, when they are in the moment, and if they have a moment where they get stressed or feel anxious, it's comfortable to go with what you're used to. Well, I always cross my hands like this, or I always put my hands in my pockets, or I always, whatever, fill in the blank. And I think for me, at least as a teacher, my goal is that all of my students know when a director tells them something, they know before they hear the note. They're like, yeah, that sounds about right. I remember doing that in the moment. I know that my eyebrows were raised kind of funny. I could feel that my jaw was a little tight. So that when they're reviewing, right, whatever they're watching, their side or their video afterwards, that they know, and they were aware in the moment of those things that were happening. It's not a surprise. And I think for a lot of actors who come to me, sometimes there's even resistance to watching self-tapes. They don't want to. They don't want to see what's there. They're a little uncomfortable, which is always sort of funny to me because I'm like, you're the actor. You're the one who wants to be seen.
Yeah,
and yet sometimes you don't want to see yourself. So being able to sit and observe and notice the differences and then be aware of the choices, or, you know, sometimes those choices are unconscious, right? Maybe they're less choices and they're just the defaults that we're talking about.
Yes.
But hopefully steering actors into a direction where, no, these were conscious choices I made. Great, it didn't work for the director or for me or my partner in the scene. And then knowing what I can do instead so that the next take can be different. And I've intentionally chosen to do something different, be it with my body, with my voice, with my breath, fill in the blank.
What exercise is most common for an actor to be able to enhance that awareness? Because yeah, it's like I love this example of just like, you know, a director or somebody giving you a note and you're like possibly like, oh, I didn't even know I did that, right? And it's like our body is our tool, right? And our instrument. So we need to be able to have full control over that, or at least continue to improve that control. So like what's like maybe a go-to exercise or something that we can do to enhance that awareness?
I think paying attention in everyday life, just in general, not just when you're acting.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people wait to act or wait to observe or wait to become aware. And this work with regard to Alexander technique is really about just be aware all the time. And sometimes that seems overwhelming for some people because it seems like an extra thing to do, but it's just noticing. When you're in the kitchen, notice how you're going to grab something and notice if your shoulder is uptight. If you're washing dishes and still thinking about a conversation you had with somebody, are you holding your breath? Just start to pay attention to your different physicalities that are coming into play in the midst of everyday activities that you don't really care a lot about. Because when it comes to acting, actors care about acting, right? But like if you're just washing dishes, chances are you don't really care about washing dishes. So you might be more inclined to notice something that you might not otherwise be able to in the midst of something like acting, like in a scene where you care more. The stakes are higher, so to speak, in that situation. Whereas if I always tell students, go for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Go for the moments where it doesn't really matter. You're in the car on the way to the audition. Are you gripping the steering wheel? Are you tightening and holding your breath? Are you running through lines and your face is getting a little stiff? Notice those things and then kind of let them go. And then as you become better at that, you can then hopefully do that in the midst of a scene or in the midst of an audition, right? Or in a conversation with a director. You'll be able to access those skills of awareness and learn what to do to release them as you get better.
All right, listen up. Our Booked It Challenge is so close. Oh my goodness. Our Booked It Challenge is one of my favorite challenges that we do each year. And I'll tell you, when I first created this challenge, I was a little bit nervous because I was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to create something where like people actually have to book jobs? Like that's not something in our control. But I took a leap of faith. I created the challenge. I called it the Booked It Challenge. And wouldn't you know, every single year, people book jobs. It's crazy. So this year, it could be you. This challenge is very simple. We're together for 4 weeks. We bring in an industry pro all 4 weeks and we work on auditions. I make it so simple, so easy. One, I give you some audition techniques to help you book the job once you have the audition. And the second is I give you some techniques to get more auditions. One of the things I've realized in being an actor over the last 20 years is that if you get more opportunities, you have more chances to book the job. So we need to increase our chances, and then the chances that we do get, we need to increase the quality of our auditions. So we're going to teach you exactly how to do all of those things. So sign up for our Booked It Challenge. It's only $37 and there's a $5 off promo in the description. So the link is there. The promo is there. Head there right now and come join us for our incredible Booked It Challenge. Oh, I love that so much. I mean, you're right. And that's like so simple. You know, it's like right now, all the listeners right now should just be like, okay, when in my day is it low stakes, like you said, and I can just bring some awareness. And as you bring, because that's small, it's like, I call it like the 1% change, right? That 1% improvement. If like literally there's just like a couple extra minutes throughout the day that you weren't having any awareness in what you were doing, and now you bring it. Now that's just a couple minutes more in that day. And then the next day can be a couple minutes more, or the next week could be a couple minutes more. And, it really is that simple. It really is that simple.
It's funny because I think about these workshops like yours that I was teaching at. And one of the first instructions I give the students is I say, you have permission and the responsibility to take care of yourself throughout this period of time that I'm teaching you. So I give that at the beginning of the workshop. And I say, it's up to you to take care of yourself. This is your body, your instrument, your voice, your breath that you're going to be using for your job, hopefully, your livelihood. And so it's important that you know how to care for it. And then about, 15 minutes into the workshop, I'll sometimes check in and I'll say, how many people still want to be standing right now? Or how many people still want to be seated? And when I ask that question, slowly, like a couple people will start to stand up or sit down, or some people will kick off their shoes, and you can see them starting to implement it and start to make themselves more comfortable. But they still need that permission again.
Right.
And then I say it, halfway through the class. Then towards the end, you see like people have started to do it more frequently. They're starting to get a little snack out. They're starting to drink a little something. And so again, it's not only being aware, but then being able to do something about it. And I'm teaching students how to better care for themselves so that in the longevity of their career, they're able to handle different situations, be more present, and hopefully be acting from a place of authenticity where they're more creative.
You mentioned longevity of an actor's career. How important do you think this work is in an actor being consistent and having a long-standing career?
Well, I think it's vital, especially if you're a theater performer. I think to me, that one's I don't even know how actors are on Broadway without these skills, to be quite honest. Now, film could be a little different because they're shorter periods of time. But I think that what this work has to offer is an individual's ability to sustain themselves in a way that they are able to show up and be comfortable in themselves and not compromise how they are feeling. So what I mean by that is that, for example, how often have you gone into a room and, you have to use the bathroom, but you're going to leave in like 10 minutes. So you're like, I'm not going to go to the bathroom. It's like we're always not listening to ourselves and our bodies and meeting it where it's at. And over time, that's actually problematic. And when it comes to excess stress or tension or rigidity in the muscles, that stuff is even worse than just not going to the bathroom because you're really tightening yourself up and you're causing excess strain that can lead to neck problems, back problems, and then all of a sudden your body gets really upset and you throw your back out and you can't do that run of the Broadway show that you've been, rehearsing for 2 months for. It's like the body has only so much that it will allow you to do before it starts letting you know, like, hey, I'm not okay with this. And actors, like a lot of performers will push themselves because, it's important. And I'm just asking students to include their physical body in that process.
Yeah, it makes me think of and I feel like everybody at one point or another has gone on a road trip And for some reason, everyone thinks like, hold it, don't stop and go to the bathroom, right? And it's like this, yeah, this like huge uncomfortability thing just so you don't stop for 4 minutes or something like that. And so it's just, I'm just like, to me, that's just like one example that I luckily got rid of. I'm like, no, I'm going to stop when I have to go to the bathroom because why do I want to be uncomfortable?
Yeah.
But I just think that like, that's like an example that everyone can kind of understand. But how often are we uncomfortable in our life, in our own skin, in our bodies?
Well, I think a lot of people struggle with anxiety and stress and tension. And when I see actors, it's often around auditioning. It's often around, maybe a callback, or then even for a lot of people, it's once they get once they get cast, then they start to freak out and they're like, oh, now what do I do? And so I think what happens is that if you are showing up to be able to do your job and you're not comfortable, chances are it's going to be a constant struggle. You're not going to be able to give your best because you're always going to be feeling sort of out of balance. And so when actors come to me, oftentimes they're like, yeah, I want to feel more present. I want to feel more grounded. I'm like, that sounds great. How are you going to do that? And Alexander is the how to do things. And how I tell students to do that is you have to know, where can you change things? What can you change? You cannot change the fact that there's a huge set full of a whole bunch of people, right? Like, that is what it is. You might be in a scene with somebody that you're uncomfortable with. Now everybody's watching you. What can you actually do about that? Well, you can notice your breathing. Okay, I'm holding my breath. Well, let me let that go. My shoulders are up to my ears. Okay, I'll let those go. I'm clenching my butt cheeks. Okay, gonna relax my butt cheeks. Then you go through sort of this list of things in your head that you can release physically. And at the end of that, they're saying action. And you're all of a sudden now ready to respond in this imaginary circumstance with whomever you're playing opposite of. And you're able to come across as more authentic in your character because you're not full of tension. You're able to have that creativity. It's like that flow that people talk about. You're just in it because you're relaxed. Your body is at a place where it's ready to perform at its peak, as opposed to having to push down any anxiety you might have felt and any tension or discomfort and then perform on top of that you're relaxed and you're in a good relationship with this person, but you actually don't even feel that. It's just more work for the actor. And I don't think it's sustainable over the course of an actor's career.
I love like all the like small kind of things that you just like made up there of like the breath, the shoulders, the butt cheeks, like whatever.
So
like
much.
yeah, there's like so many like little things, and it's like, how often are we going through our day? Are we going through our activities? Are we going through, problems, right? And we have all of these different stresses in our body, and because of that, like, we're not able to perform at the level we would like to. And when I say perform, I don't just mean perform as like an actor. I mean perform just in life. What are some cool breakthroughs that you've seen within students getting rid of these stresses that has just been like, wow, like one day you were this, and then because of this awareness and getting rid of this tension, like this just opened up for you?
I mean, I have so many stories that I could share. It's hard to choose just one. I mean, it is from things like people walking on a red carpet and having jaw tension, TMJ, and feeling like I have to show up and I'm really uncomfortable, to I can walk on the red carpet and I am at ease. And yes, it's not my favorite thing to do, but I don't dread it anymore. It doesn't cause me severe anxiety. I know how to handle it in the moment, right? Or even I'm thinking of an actor who had an opportunity to interact with a very famous director, and she had a lot of anxiety around that. And she had a conversation with him where she was like, oh, it went so well. And I was, half the time I was paying attention to me. I wasn't even paying attention to him. I was just noticing my body language and where I was standing in relationship to him. And she said, and just that helped her calm down and be able to feel like her responses to her director were a little bit more free flowing and were not as, she wasn't stuck in this sort of fight or flight that a lot of actors get stuck in these moments when they don't know what to do because they're startled or they're stressed. And I think the skills that students see, at least from my experience, is that they are in this sort of state of what we would call relaxation. And I don't mean that where they can't perform at a peak. I just mean that they're not in a heightened state of stress, the stress response, where their adrenaline is kicking off so much that they can't think clearly, right? And there's this sort of like fine line because you need a certain amount of adrenaline to perform, right? Like
Yeah,
Taylor
that's true.
Swift hopefully still gets butterflies when she goes on stage, right?
Right.
You know, football players have to be able to have sort of this blood pumping, their heart racing before they get onto the field, but it's not debilitating.
Yes.
It's not causing them to freeze on the field and not be able to play, or for an actor not to be able to perform when the director says action. So I think for students, it's, you know, it's being able to overcome any of the obstacles that they either know they have or they don't know that they have. And then in the moment, they're able to find themselves on the other side where they're like, that was actually really easy. That wasn't hard. You know, the more people learn the Alexander technique, things become much easier. It's like, oh, I've been making it hard.
Mm-hmm.
I have been, you know, like, yes, if I'm not breathing when somebody talks to me, I'm just, you know, oh, if I just breathe, and then I'll be able to have an idea and tell them, oh, that's a good question. I never thought about it. Instead of feeling like, oh, I need to respond right away and I don't know what to say. And I just, you know, it's like giving people permission to check in with themselves moment by moment and feeling comfortable with who they are and where they're coming from.
The Alexander technique to be a certified instructor is a 3-year journey. I mean, so that's a larger journey. You know what I mean? That's not
Yes.
like I'm just gonna go do this. So like, what drew you into wanting to do that?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's 3 years and it's over 1,600 hours. And so my background is actually in theater. So I have a degree in acting, specifically performance. And when I was through with my degree, I started performing in Chicago. And I thought at some point I'm going to go become an Alexander technique teacher because I loved it. I had a teacher in college who had exposed me to this work. And it just changed my life. It made me feel so good physically. I didn't know I wasn't comfortable, actually. That's what it was.
Wow.
I didn't know I
the
was
awareness.
yes.
Right.
And until somebody helped sort of take those layers of tension and anxiety off of me, and then I felt like I could breathe. I literally felt like air was always coming into me, and I was like, oh my God, I feel so light and so free and so easy. And I was much more creative. So I knew at some point I'm going to be a teacher, you know, when the timing is right. And I thought I would do both. I actually thought I was going to still perform as well. But when I was through with my 3-year program, I was like, oh, I'm actually really good at this. And I really love helping people. I really like to see people change. I like to see people get better. I like to see people improve. And that's to me is like what's really fun. Right. So, and my background, I always sort of share this with my students. My background is a bit, you know, traumatic, like most people. You know, I was molested at a young age, and then my only brother died when I was 15. And both of those events really kind of shaped physically who I was, mentally, emotionally. And it's no wonder that I ran off to like be an actor. You know, it's like you can express yourself through these characters and you can have all these feelings that maybe you're not comfortable as yourself having. And this work really transformed my experience of those events and really helped me embrace me, actually, so that I felt like I could embody myself. So I have a lot of people, not just actors, but a lot of people in general who will come to this work and they say, I've done a lot of therapy, I've done a lot of self-work, but there's some disconnect. There's something not right. Because their body is still sort of stuck in this old traumatic place. And so it's not in alignment. And I don't think that's unique to my traumatic experiences. I think a lot of people, either through puberty as their body changes and grows, or just who they are in the different experiences that have shaped their lives, I don't think people know necessarily how to embody themselves and feel comfortable in their own skin. And this work does that for people. And so for me, that's like very, very interesting. And it's kind of what gets me excited every day, because while the work is always the same, the student's always different.
Yeah.
And so getting to watch them go through the trajectory of change gets exciting for me. And I see how people, you know, will change jobs. I mean, sometimes I tease, I'm like, yeah, lots of people get divorced, change jobs, change careers, because they realize like, oh, I can't actually get better if I don't change some big things that are standing in my way. There's like this bravery that happens when people embrace change, and it's a little uncomfortable.
It's definitely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Definitely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think, I think that's a beautiful transformation for yourself, and then to be able to experience that and witness that in others. Is there, I don't know, maybe like a step or an exercise, or like the first thing to do if you are somebody that's not feeling comfortable in your own body, something that needs to happen, or a step that needs to be taken?
Yeah. So probably the one and only exercise that Alexander teachers will give to students is constructive rest. And that is, for some people, they embrace it fully. They do it 2 or 3 times a day. And for other people, they're like, yeah, I don't do it. I was the kind of person, I didn't do it for 5 years. I didn't like it. Unless I was with a teacher, I wasn't comfortable being with myself. So I will share that with your listeners today, knowing that some of them might embrace it and some might be like, I don't know, not yet,
Yeah.
But the idea is that you find a quiet space in your home or in your workplace or wherever you may be, and you get a yoga mat and you lie on the floor. Now, when you lie on the floor, you're hopefully on like a carpet or a rug or something with your yoga mat, so it's comfortable. It's not hardwood floors or tile. And you've got a couple books under your head. We call them books because you don't want a pillow. We want something that just allows the alignment of your neck and your head to your body to be in alignment. Your knees are bent, your feet are flat on the floor. And you do this for 10 minutes. That's all. 10 minutes. There's no music. There's no podcast in the background, no partner talking to you. You just are with yourself quietly for 10 minutes. So it's different from meditation because you're not supposed to empty your mind. In meditation, we want to empty our mind so we're not thinking about things. But with constructive rest, we want it to be you are resting your body constructively. So you are letting yourself feel your back on the floor. Maybe you notice that your shoulders are up and you're like, oh, okay, my shoulders are up. You notice maybe that your hands are in little fists on your ribs and you're like, okay, I'm going to relax my fingers. And maybe you notice that you want to close your eyes and you say, I'm going to open my eyes. And you go through sort of a body scan from your head to your toes, and you just check in with how things are feeling and what you notice. Now, some people will feel like they noticed nothing. The time passed and nothing happened. That's okay. Some people will be like, oh, I really can feel my lower back, or that felt really good, or I didn't realize how tight my neck was, okay? But it's essentially an opportunity for your body to communicate with you. Now, that might sound weird, but our body's always competing for our attention, right? We're always in our head thinking about like, oh, I got to pick up the kids and I got to make sure I send that thing. And did I return that package? It's like always got stuff in it. Meanwhile, our body is moving us from A to B. It's moving us around all the time. And we're not necessarily slowing down enough to know what it's trying to communicate. So then tension will build up. All of a sudden I've got neck pain or back pain, or, heaven forbid you throw your back out. Your body is trying to find ways to communicate with you, but you're not listening, and there's no room for it to talk to you. So constructive rest eliminates all the other background noise, and it gives you a moment in time where for 10 to 15 minutes a day, you're just listening, and you're just like, okay, I'm here. Let's see what happens. And over time, I think the body gets more comfortable with like, oh, she's going to trust me to talk to me. She's like, we're in a good relationship. And you will find that the body is more able to meet you where you're at when you're upright. So it teaches you not only to listen to yourself, but also what alignment is right. So that, for example, when you get up off the floor, you might notice your shoulders have relaxed. And then when, say, a roommate or a partner comes in and your shoulders go up, you have that awareness because you're like, oh, my shoulders weren't up in constructive rest. My shoulders were down. And so you'll have that opportunity to notice how the body has responded to a stimulus, to something happening, and your body reacting. And then you'll have a way to get out of it so that you're like, oh yeah, when I was in constructive rest, everything was relaxed. That's what we want. It's sort of the ideal is, I think of it as neutral. You want your body to be a neutral so that you're better able to choose how you respond and how your body language is, how your hand gestures are, your facial expressions. Now I'm talking about actors specifically, but you're able to make those decisions because you know what's happening. Because you know what the ideal is, which is, yeah, I'm at rest. I'm at ease in my body.
I love that. I mean, and that's such an easy exercise. And for those of you that I know are thinking, oh God, I don't have time. It's like, you start with 5 minutes. everyone has 5 minutes, right? And
I
then,
always say 2.
yeah,
Because
there you go too.
I figure if you get down on the floor for 2 minutes, chances are you'll stay for 5.
There-
So I just say 2.
We're tricking them. We're tricking them.
Kind of, yeah.
Just have 2 minutes. Yeah, I love that. And again, I think it circles back to the idea of just building up that awareness, and I liked the idea of like the talking to your body and how it's trying to get our attention, but it most of the time is probably not getting through because we're worried about that email, or we're worried about kids, or worried about all of our other obligations or whatever. So this is a way to open up that line of communication with your body so it can happen more effectively, more clearly, more often.
Yeah. And I think for actors, it's exciting to know, like, when you look back at your self-tape and you're like, oh, I know I did those things. I remember kind of looking to that side, or I could feel that my shoulder was coming up or that my hand was in this weird place. To know that and then to see it, it feels really empowering because you can then make choices next time where you're like, I'm actually going to consciously put my hands here because I think that appears more powerful in the scene. I think making a choice like this is more conducive to the scene. You have more freedom to make choices that are more well informed and more conscious, versus I'm just hoping that I'll go with the flow and it will instinctively come to me, which also works. But at least in that moment what choices you've made, and they're not just kind of left to whatever unconscious habits you have, in the moment.
In watching actors' self-tapes, is there a common denominator that you see that needs to be improved pretty often?
That's an interesting question. I think that people don't know what they're doing with their forehead. I don't think that they know what they're doing. Yeah, I feel like the face is an interesting one. I don't think people know what they're doing with their face or where their head's at,
Yeah.
I think that people and this is very common. If for listeners, if you remember ever looking at a picture of yourself and being like, oh, I don't remember looking like that. I didn't feel like I was like that. That's what I'm talking about, is that sometimes we don't actually know what we look like to the outside world. And so these self-tapes, I feel like oftentimes actors will not necessarily be aware of the overuse of maybe their forehead, either when they're listening, right, to somebody else, or when they're performing and speaking lines. And, I like to remind people acting is speaking, but it's also about, your body language, your facial expressions. It's about your voice, your breath.
And that says so much more than the words.
Yeah. They say there's a 7% rule, which is 7% of your communication is your text. So when I talk to students about that, I'm like, well, if you think about that, when you take a scene study class, that means you're addressing 7% of your craft.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that leaves, how they break it down, the study is that 38% of your communication is your vocal inflection. So if I said, hi, my name is Morgan, I'm a nationally certified Alexander technique teacher, that's maybe, a little monotone and nobody really cares about that. Whereas when you start to vocalize, change your pitch, maybe change your pace, you have different choices. That's communicating 38% of your message. Then that leaves 55% to body language.
Yeah.
That's your posture, your facial expressions, your hand gestures, where you are in space. And I feel like a lot of people, again, if you're not comfortable with your body, that part is going to be more difficult for you in your performance. And so
not only that, you're going to communicate something else.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's being able to have your body language in alignment with whatever your 7% of your text is, with your vocal inflection, so that it's all intended for the message that you're trying to portray as the character. So that there's no what's the word I'm looking for? There's no discrepancy between what you're trying to communicate, like you said, and what your body language is illustrating. And I think that's where people get confused. They lose track of what it is that they're, doing, because again, maybe they get nervous or maybe they get upset in a scene and then their face starts to take over. And now it's not what they were after. And they look back and they're like, ugh, and you only get one take or you only get one whatever. It's like, So the actors are able to better have a handle of what it is that I'm doing and how I consciously want to show up for my character. So being intentional with my body language so that it matches whatever I'm saying.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the percentages. I didn't have them memorized like you did, so impressive. But I do I'll go over that and teach that because it's like I'm trying to, I always try to find easier ways to like teach things for actors to be able to get it. And it's like something like your body language. And it's like if you understand that 55% of what you're saying is through your body language, how are you standing? Have you thought about that, or are you just standing? And so I think that is such a great example of why this work is so important, because if your body is doing things that you're completely unaware of, you are now communicating things that you're also unaware of. And so you're not in alignment or congruent with what you're actually trying to accomplish.
That's the word I was looking for. Incongruency.
There you go.
I knew it would come to me. Yeah, I think, and the thing is look, this work, as the name suggests, is a technique. It is a skill, like all things, and how you began this conversation, about the importance of learning different skills. It's not that this is the only way. This is just a way. And whenever I teach my students, I tell them that Alexander is the how to do things. How do I take my Meisner class? How do I take my stage combat or my voice lessons or my whatever, fill in the blank? How do I do that? Hopefully it's with ease, because you will learn better if you are comfortable, if you are relaxed. If you are somebody who walks around with a lot of anxiety and stress and tension in your body, that is going to interfere with your craft. It's just in the way. And so the more relaxed you can be, the more calm your nervous system is, the better creativity you're going to have, the more present you're going to be able to have. So it's a little indirect, right? Because people are just like, I want to be present. I want to be grounded. Well, how do you do that? And I'm always suggesting, as an Alexander teacher, you're doing that by being able to be more calm and regulated in your nervous system, so you're better able to show up in your work.
I love that. Well, Morgan, I think we should get to our spotlight sign off, which is 5 questions to end strong.
Oh,
yeah.
What's that about?
Well, what's that about? It's just 5 questions to end strong. The first one is, which I think is really important, is, to make sure that we're always on top of our gratitude. What's something you're super grateful for today?
Oh, what am I grateful for? That's a really good question. I am just grateful to be here. I am grateful, like I said before, because my brother died at a young age, I just always feel like I'm on borrowed time. He died at 17. I'm so lucky. If I get gray hair, I am lucky. I just think to be alive is really nice. And so I always tell myself, wherever I am, if I'm going to die right now, it's okay. I'm always where I want to be. So I feel like I'm just grateful for all the opportunities that I have to show up and do the work that I do.
Can I ask you a side question? Since
that part of the 5?
It's not part of the 5. This is going to be This is going to be a 1.5, I guess.
Perfect.
But how? And I'm sure this is a whole other podcast topic question right now. But you brought up your brother passing.
Oh, yeah.
And you seem to have a very much ease with that, where I think some people have trouble moving on from tragedies, if you want to call it that. Is there anything that you could share for someone that might be struggling with a loss or something maybe unexpected or a tragedy like that? Like, you've obviously done extensive work, I feel like, to be where you are and be able to talk about it so
That's funny
easily.
Because the therapist that I had to see eventually in my 20s, he was like, yeah, I'm not going to see you unless you come once a week for 2 years or something like that. He's like, you've got so much disassociation. But, I've definitely done a lot of work. I think for me, I've always been a very decisive person. Okay, I'm a Capricorn. I don't know. Maybe that's a Capricorn thing. I've always just chosen. So even when my brother died, which was very dramatic. We were on a vacation in the Bahamas for a family reunion, and he died on New Year's Eve, 3 days after my 15th birthday. And my mom, dad, and I were in a limousine to the airport, or to the hospital rather, and we were missing our flight. And he died in the limo. They didn't have an ambulance there. I don't know why. But then when we got there, all the doors were locked. And anyway, I diverge. the point is that as soon as they came out and they were like, he died, he got meningitis, by the way. I decided in that moment, I was like, I am not going to let this define me. I'm not like, I remember making a choice and making a decision. Now, mine was immediate, but I don't think that anybody has to have it in the moment. I think at any point, people can decide who they are and what they want to do and what they want to be. And for me, I was like, I am not going to be miserable. I'm not going to be not happy because my brother died. And my brother was like my best friend. We were actually incredibly close, but I really decided, and I'm super stubborn. So I don't think I was always happy, but I was determined to find a way to be. I was like, I will find a way. And I think that perseverance, determination, and commitment are really important with anything that you do.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that's what helped me. So I quit therapy a lot. Nobody wants to talk about these things that make them uncomfortable. I'm the first person to be like, yeah, for sure. So I think, I quit therapy something like 7 or 8 times before I was like, okay, anytime it got hard, I would walk away. I'd change therapist. I would try, I'd give it time, whatever. It wasn't until this one, frankly, very assertive therapist was like, yeah, you've got lots of stuff you have to work on, that I was like, okay, I'm ready to commit. And the minute that you're ready to commit, then you just do it. So I teach my daughters that if you sign up for something, you have to do it throughout the duration of whatever it is. If you're signing up for swim team or choir, whatever, you don't quit because it gets hard. When it gets hard, it means that you're learning and that's getting better. And so that's another thing I teach in your classes actually is a commitment to failure. I'm like, we have to all be okay with failing, making mistakes and learning because that's the way you're going to get there. And we can't be embarrassed or ashamed or not willing to try because we're scared of what's going to happen. We have to be okay with the fact that, yeah, it's going to be like a little messy because that's how we get there. And I think for trauma, it's similar, that it's not going to be necessarily from A to B. It's going to be a little it's going to be a little rocky. And I think if you are determined, you will seek out resources and help to get you there. And it's not linear. I don't think healing is linear. I think it's a process, and you have to give yourself permission to grieve and go through whatever your journey is, I suppose.
I feel like it's so powerful, though, the decision that you talk about making. And I think a lot of times we can overthink that maybe it could just be that easy. It doesn't mean that you're not sad. It doesn't mean that you don't miss anyone. It doesn't mean that like it's shitty that happened, right? But it's like, well, I'm going to decide that this won't define me, or I'm going to decide to still be happy, or I'm going to decide to still live a fruitful life or whatever it might be, and not let these things that happen to everyone define you, hold you back, make you sad, make you miserable, make you upset. Because theoretically, this is the one time we're doing this.
Exactly. And there's a quote that I'm going to botch, but I'll try. I
always say when you paraphrase a quote, it just means you said it.
Oh, even better. Okay, well, Kristen, I'm sure you know Kristen Linklater, Freeing the Natural Voice. It's a wonderful book for your listeners. And in chapter 2 on why the voice does not work, she says very eloquently, she talks about the fact that most habits that we have are, they're conscious and they're chosen on purpose. Like, what route to take to work? Do you shower at night or in the morning? And we choose those. She says, however, that most unconscious habits that we have are oftentimes, what does she say? She says most unconscious habits that we have are often created by other people than oneself in childhood. And those are usually emotional and mental. That those habits of ours that we have, most mental and emotional habits are unconscious and chosen by other people than oneself in childhood. That's the quote. And I think about that often, and I'll share that with students because I'm like, how many people feel like they're too loud, they're too noisy, they're too big, they're too small, they're too whatever, fill in the blank, whatever you believe yourself to be. What do you believe about yourself? What are your mantras that you tell yourself? And then ask yourself, did somebody else tell me that? Is that something that was conditioned into me that, oh, you're like this, or you're too whatever, or you're very pretty, or you're whatever they tell us in childhood? And at what point are you going to say, I get to decide? Who am I and how do I show up? It's, you're an adult. By the time I meet people, they're adults. And I'm like, who are you? Who do you want to be? And make decisions about that. Just
And
because
you get to.
Yes. And just because you were some way, some other time in your life doesn't mean that's who you are now.
Yeah.
You can always change and let it be change that has been conscious, that has been chosen by you and is intentional. That is not as a result of you just going like with the flow and letting other people in society tell you who you are.
Beautifully put. Thank you for that.
Ish, that quote was botched.
Because it's yours now.
Ish, that's even worse.
Well, question. Now we'll get to question 2. I
Right.
feel like we went off on a
Yes.
pit stop there, which I liked. Question 2 is there a television show, film, or book that changed the trajectory of your life?
Is there Oh, yes, there is a book that changed my life. A book. It's The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge. Have you heard of that? Have you
No.
read it? Oh, it's brilliant. It's about the neuroplasticity of the brain. I love the brain. I like science. And anyway, it's just that we oftentimes think that when you get old, it's like your brain, when I grew up in the 80s, it's like your brain, like cells die. And it's like you've grown as much as you can grow and that's it. But actually, the brain is very, there's plasticity in the brain and it's very changeable. And so his book illustrates in these chapters different ways in which he has witnessed the brain being basically changeable. And there's just wonderful stories in it, and the way that he shares that information is amazing. So that really just got me thinking about, I'm not static. I'm not fixed. It's not just black or white. Things are ever evolving and changing. There's also, I'm going to add a second one.
Do it.
It's called The Body Keeps the Score, which that one's also, it's a little harder to read. So I always tell people maybe do it in chunks or try the audiobook perhaps. But that one is also important about how the body keeps things, trauma and emotions inside, and basically helps individuals, recognize and gain awareness of how their body has been impacted by the events of their life.
Got it. Nice. The third question is, what is something in your daily routine that you really cherish?
Yeah, exercise. Exercise. I think moving the body is really important. So exercise and whatever it is. So I like to run and lift weights and do abs. So that's my, yoga, whatever. That stuff is my happy. Anything that uses my body in a way where it feels like it's being worked. I like the feel of like when your muscles are tired.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It's not muscles tired because you're fatigued. It's like a different kind of, it's like you've worked them and they're like,
Yeah, you're like, I did work.
Yes, yes,
Do you
I
do
love
you
that.
do some sort of exercise every single day? Like, are you the person that like you go crazy if it doesn't happen?
This is how you give away that you don't have kids, yo. No. When you've got children, it's a whole other ballgame. No, I try. It used to be 5 or 6 times a week. Now I'm good if it's 3 or 4 times a week. It changes with the seasons. So I'm very much, again, present. We spoke about this before we started recording. The season that I'm in right now with my family and my life and my work does not allow for more. And it's okay. I don't have any judgment around that. It's just, it is what it is. Would I like more? Of course. So any opportunity I get, I will put it in. But my season is such that I don't have as much room right now. But once the season is passed, yes, I prioritize it. Typically speaking, I put it in. So that's the fixed thing. That's the thing that doesn't change because it's the thing that allows me to show up at my best for all the other stuff during the day.
Awesome. Question 4 is, what is something you're currently trying to improve in your life right now?
Just one? Shoot, we got to do a whole other podcast. I'm working on so many things. The thing that I'm working on the most right now is the way that I speak. And I've been working on this for a decade, literally a decade. And I know that because my daughter's 10. Because when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was like, I need to just be careful about how I speak, what I say. So I've been getting rid of the words like should and you need to and you have to, and changing those to things like, well, as your Alexander teacher, I think it would be a good idea if you would explore ... So I'm trying to give more autonomy to my students and also be able to invite others to participate as themselves, where I'm not just the one who, I think, especially as a teacher, I think it can be that we're like these dogmatic, I don't know. I want to give permission for my students to feel empowered to help with their own learning. And I think that I can help them do that better if I watch the way I speak and if I'm more thoughtful and considerate.
Definitely. I believe that we have through some of my mentorship that I've learned from, kind of joke that it's like we have the ability to be like wizards, and it's through our language. And so it's like, have the ability to be a wizard to give you more confidence and like you said, make you feel improved and feel confident and empowered and stuff. So it's very, very powerful. I cannot agree more. So good.
Yeah,
So good.
I think sometimes students will be like, "Oh, it's so great you did this." And I'm like, "No." I always remind them, "I want you to be able to do this without me."
Yes. Yeah.
Like I want you, which, a student sends me a note. "I'm in Cambodia. I woke up with back pain and then I helped myself." Like, that's great. I want those emails and I want you to come to me because it's nice to do it with somebody else, but you can do it on your own.
Yeah.
That's really important to me. So I don't know. I just think that words are very important to me. And so I've been working on that. But that's a tricky one, friend. Always working on it.
Yeah. But I can tell you right now, just in this podcast episode and you and I talking back and forth and with us working together in the past, I already know that you're getting better at it and you're much improved from 10 years ago. That's for sure.
I sure hope so.
And you're only going to continue to get better.
Yeah.
Well, last question is, we've gone over a bunch of different cool stuff. If there was one thing you want all the listeners to get for sure, whether it be something we covered or maybe something else, what would it be?
Oh, you know what? I always I give these cards out to my students when I'm teaching that says "You are worthy," and I just want people to know that they're important and that they matter and that they're important and they deserve to be seen and heard and valued and understood. I think, because I was speaking with you earlier about this, I have a private practice, not just in Atlanta, but in New York City. And the common theme that I often hear is, everybody kind of has similar struggles. And I think, it's important to remember that like we're not alone in that and that we're all important, and whatever we're dealing with is important to us, even though it might seem small in comparison to somebody else. But we're all worthy of being here and being present. And people matter.
I love it. Perfect way for us to wrap up this episode. Morgan, thank you so much for being here. It really was wonderful speaking with you and sharing the Alexander technique and more. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Everyone, thank you again for being here. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure to subscribe. We look at the back end of things. Over half of our listeners aren't subscribed. So if that's you, I'm calling you out right now. Also, leave us a review. If you're watching on YouTube, comment and let us know what you thought about this episode. Thanks for including Get Scene Unscripted on your journey. We'll see you on the next one.